I've seen over the years a little bit of a reduction in some things with some of my kids. It comes back in the wintertime, but as parents and coaches, we have to be able to give some grace to these kids, especially during the fall season, to understand that these kids are doing multiple things throughout the year.
Whether you live north, east, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus. Hello, everyone. Yes, we are finally back after our little hiatus. This is the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with Jay and Ken. Obviously, I'm Ken. Say hi, Jay.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome back. You had to take a little vacation, a little breather there. Let Ken get his little hula on and his lays. So he's back. How was it, Ken?
It was a lot of fun. We had a great time there, did a lot of things, did a lot of the tours. I will say, for those who haven't been, Hawaii is beautiful, but it's very expensive. So
yes, I hear.
Yeah, just, trying to get something to eat or, having a drink or something. Yeah, especially when you're used to doing the all-inclusive types of places. Here you're paying for everything. So every snack you get, every drink you get, you're thinking about, oh my gosh, that costs a lot of money.
You didn't have a chance to go see the University of Hawaii's softball field or anything, did you? The wife let you do that or no?
No, softball was not on the agenda for this trip.
Come on, Ken, you got to learn how to sneak that in there. You just check those things out and go meet the coaches there and see a fall ball game. Good for you.
Yeah, no, that was not on the island tour package either. So, we did a lot of that, going around the islands, the different ones. We were on 3 different islands: Kauai, Oahu, and Maui. So
did you have to fly to those islands?
Yes.
Every time?
Yep.
Was that the small planes to those, or was it still like a decent sized jet?
It was a decent sized jet. It was one of those 5 across where you have 2 seats on the left and 3 seats on the right. Fortunately, we were able to get the 2 seats on the left each time. It takes about 45 minutes or so to go from island to island, but of course you have to get there early. You have to, sit around for a while, and then if there's any delays or anything like that, we spent a fair amount of time at some airports.
Awesome.
But before we get into it, and one thing I was going to share with you was that's probably the only place, at least in the U.S., where when we landed on our flight from the continental U.S. in Hawaii, our first stop was Kauai, and we get out, we get our baggage, walk out to the curb, and there's a rooster just kind of walking around like nobody's business.
Nice.
Yeah, apparently roosters and chickens are all over the place on all the islands. They gave up trying to do anything about it a long time ago. Now they just coexist.
Hey, it is what it is. It's their land too, right? So awesome.
Yeah, so that took a little getting used to, but it was fun.
So I'm excited too. I was going to say for you, was that your first time there?
Yes, that was my first time.
So that had to be exciting for you, breathtaking in the views, right? I hear the views are just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. The just what you see, one after the other. When we got back to O'Hare and we were coming home in the Uber, my wife was commenting. She says, "Yeah, I miss seeing the ocean and the beaches and the mountains and all the scenery and everything already."
Yeah. Well, good for you guys. You guys deserve it.
Well, thanks. Hey, so it looks like your team with your daughter is off to a good start.
Yeah, you know what? We didn't know what to expect, Ken, and we're, like I said, we're classified as a C-level team. We're coming right out of 10U Rec Ball All-Stars. It's a brand new team. It's got I think from that all-star team, I think we've got about 4 or 5 kids that were on that team. So we have, 7, 8 kids that are new. Yeah, it's been great. We're working with them. We have basically a 3-hour practice on Sunday, and we kind of split that up into hours, give them breaks in between and stuff like that, chance for them to talk and whatnot. And then on Tuesday nights, we do hitting. So they do an hour and a half of hitting every week. I bring in some different instructors to help them. It's not just my voice. I feel that, as we know with motor preferences, everything is different. People move differently. So I don't want it to be one voice with one swing. I want it to find the best swings for each kid. So that's kind of stuff too. And just the reps there alone are already helping some of these kids. It was really great to see. Again, we're not playing a lot this fall. We're playing 3 tournaments. So we have 2 left. And it was really great to see their development just over this past month already. I mean, we had kids, the first time that we were in the cages that didn't even touch a ball when we were just doing front toss.
Oh, wow.
We had some of those kids putting the ball in play, hitting them, ground balls up the middle, line drives, so on and so forth. And it was really good seeing them make plays and things like that. And it also was really cool that we played is we got a chance to see what we need to work on. Right. So, we've got a friendly or scrimmage game coming up this Wednesday. We're going to flip our order. We're going to let people play in different positions. And I think that's a great thing to do for those kids is they've got to learn confidence and development in other positions, not just the same batting order, the same 5 kids at the top and everybody's at the bottom. So, and that's just one of my things. I want to make sure I develop all 12 of these kids, not just the top 5 or 6, 7. You know what I mean? So off to a good start. We're 3-1 and we were shocked to say the least about how well we did. And I don't think we'll be classified as a C-level team very much longer, especially a USSSA, that kind of stuff. If you win some against some B-level teams, they're going to bump you up. And I'm okay with that. Now I know kind of what we're up against and what we're doing. And I think, even the game that we lost was a competitive game. It was like a 7-4 game and we ran it the whole way. So yeah, it was great. So
good. And I saw something about now you have to get a dog. What'd your daughter do?
So I've been telling my kid forever, I'm like, listen, and just trying to get kids at that age to learn to swing hard, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think, that's the hardest thing. She makes great contact, but the contact that she makes is just enough to get the ball past the infielders, so she'll kind of dink and dunk you, hit you, base hit to base hit from time to time. And that's fine with me. Trust me. Like I'm totally fine with that, but I'm looking to get her to understand that she's got to swing the bat harder. And she's got a great hitting coach too. And I'll talk about her in a second. And that's our thing is like, if we're going to hit the ball, let's hit it hard. And, and with age comes strength. And I think as we get into this podcast, that's one of the things I want to talk about is speed, a couple of things. And so watching her grow and get a little taller and a little stronger, now she's hitting the ball. She had a hit in the first game, which was an absolute line drive to the fence and got a double on it.
Nice.
And the dog is coming from, I told her if she ever gets a home run, meaning that the ball was hit to the outfielder close to the fence and she ended up scoring, whether it was over the fence or not, we would get a dog. And so she came up in one of the games and she hit a line drive missile over the center fielder's head. And she took off on them bases, Ken, and it was clean. It wasn't like there was a play. The play at the plate wasn't even close. It wasn't like somebody bobbled the ball or any of that. It was a legit inside the park home run. And so, we're getting a dog. I don't know if we're going to do a rescue or if we're going to buy one, but she's working hard. I'm super proud of her. She'll like today. She's going to come with me to the St. Xavier games, and we're going to do some reps on the field. Like she wants to do that. I'm not forcing her at all. I just ask her, "Do you want to go?" And she says, yeah. So we're getting a puppy, and I think I have only one stipulation, and that's I want to call it Chet. It seems like a great dog name, Chet. So
yeah. That's great though. It's all about motivation, right?
It is. Yeah. So
well, good.
And like I said, it's exciting. Our team the entire team hit the ball well all weekend. We put up, I want to say, I don't know, almost close to 40 runs in 4 games. So, they're hitting the ball. We're playing good defense right now. And I'm sure that's going to go up and down, but it was exciting for them and for us to see kind of what we have. So
that's good. And so that kind of gets us into maybe our first topic. So you're a college coach. You're used to dealing with athletes in that age, the 18 to 21, 22 range. And then now you're working with a group of 10-year-olds. So what's different about coaching 10-year-olds versus college players? I imagine some of what you do is the same. Some things are probably different, but what do you find that, maybe works for college, but doesn't necessarily work with a group of 10-year-olds?
Well, I think the idea that these 10-year-olds know what to do, right? Like college kids know, and most of them. Let's not be crazy here. Some of them
true.
forget too, and that's okay. But the IQ on the college kid is through experience, right? They've done it. They were at 10U at one point, 12U, and so on and so forth. And they have all of those thousands of reps and situational experiences that allow them to already know kind of what to do with the ball. Whereas, 10 and 12, 11-year-olds that I'm dealing with they don't really have that experience. You got to remember, if you've ever been to a 10U rec all-star game, as soon as the ball is hit to the outfield, they're screaming to throw the ball to the pitcher. Right. And so breaking them of that, because I don't see my college kids throwing the ball to the pitcher when they get the ball in the outfield. Right. So we talk about we're throwing the ball to a person or a base. We're not throwing it to the pitcher. We're either hitting our cut or we're throwing the ball to the base, but we are not throwing the ball to the pitcher. More times than not, what I tell them, Ken, is that once that person has the ball, if there's not another play, we're actually going to run the ball into the pitcher. Right. At this age, you have kids that throw the ball around, and that's how they, honestly, the game that we lost, we threw the ball around too much. We tried to make plays when people were already safe at bases, so on and so forth. So it's trying to get them to understand that we have to minimize the errors. And I would tell you that that's, and play defense, right? Like I would tell you that's probably the secret to every game that we play, even at the college levels. The team that minimizes the errors, right, and gives up less free stuff is going to be the successful team more times than not. Right. And so we talk about with them, like they have to earn it. So that's one of the things that I would tell you. Our warm-ups are very similar to what we do at St. Xavier or what they did at Loyola when we were there. I'm teaching them how we've got to use some armbands. We're starting to get into armbands and that stuff, arm care. Then we'll go in and do our everydays or our dailies, as we call them. Right. Then we'll go into our throwing progression, which, and again, I stole that from, at this age, I feel like this, right? Like I think people that are coaching travel ball or just even high school, I feel that we don't take enough time to actually work on the fundamentals of the game. So my point of that is like, we do what we call a functional warm up with my 11-year-olds. We do it, right? So what we do is we do our stand and we twist to feel the hip, help the shoulder separate, right? We do that. Then we back up and we work on our separation, Ken. So they're working on, breaking their egg and getting the ball out of their mitt fast in the proper position. And then we throw short from there. Then they back up with that transition, right? Then what we do is we move into a transition to a throw to the other person, who then goes down and tags, comes back up and transitions into theirs. So the point of our warm up is pretty simple. It's that it's not just a warm up. It's a chance for you to get better at the skills that you're trying to do in the game, right? We'll actually do one too, where I call it positive negative. And it's basically like a cutoff. So the person who catches the ball will now turn around and throw the ball behind them as if a line drive was hit over their head in the outfield. And then as they go positive to the ball, or, the other player from the other side comes to it as well. So they go positive one way, and then they go negative the other. So it's learning that, the ball's over that player's head. I've got to go get that. And then I have to be the cut. I've got to learn how to split the difference and know my player's arm and so on and so forth. So every time we warm up, we try to get better, not just get warm. I think if you go and watch travel ball games, you see a lot of kids that just warm up. They just throw the ball. It's a lazy throw. They'll get their feet moving eventually, but I rarely see anybody practicing tags or cutoffs when you have a chance to warm up. So for me, my philosophy is, if we're going to throw a ball, I don't know in softball where there's just a throw and there's no action after the throw, right? And we talk about too is, and this came up in the game, and this was at practice, and I had to talk to the kid. There was a play with 2 outs at first base, Ken, and it was a ground ball. And the player, the shortstop or the third baseman, threw the ball low, and the first baseman went down to get it. and came up, and now there was a runner at second at the time. Okay. So that runner's taking off to third. The ball, the kid caught the ball. The umpire thought she didn't have it, called her safe. And guess what the runner from second did? She went home. And what did our first baseman do? Because he called her out with 2 outs, she's looking at the umpire going, well, I told her, I said, we're looking for the 4th out. We're going to play until they tell you to stop. And that's the thing at this age. What I will tell you is at this age, at 11U, the hardest thing to teach them is it's not base to base and out to out anymore, right? Like they want to get a ground ball to just over shortstop head or a little blooper, and they want to stop and run through first base. I want you to turn and look for 2. Get to that second. It's not base to base anymore. We've got to learn that this game, we want to take advantage of situations where we can. So that's one of the biggest things I would tell you. Whereas at the college level, I feel that those kids already know, like they're thinking 2 out of the box, and they're going to stretch that single into a double. Whereas at this age, it's very base to base. It's very not lead out, but get the easy out instead of the lead out. And those are things I think, our mindset and philosophy is I'm okay with losing games if our kids are doing stuff that we're doing in practice, right? Like if we're going for that lead runner at second and it's we got a force at second and our kid's going to throw the ball to 2 to get her out and maybe she beats the throw, I'm fine with it because at least that kid had the knowledge to go for the lead out instead of just going to the easy play at 1. So those are some of the biggest things that I see. And it's a lot more instructional. And I'm a tough coach, Ken. I'm a barker. I like to get loud. Right. But it's not like I'm yelling at kids. I'm cheering them on. Right. It's like, you got this. Let's go. It's not like you suck. You're terrible. Like it's a whole different thing. So like when they do a great play, I bring them off to the side and I say, hey, that's all right. Like we did this, and this, but we got to work on that next time, or we got to do this. Or if they make that play, like I'm the first guy high-fiving them because they know it, that you see the energy building off of them. So where I think college kids are more, and not that we don't give them that affirmation, right? But I think that they're a little bit more used to making that play. Whereas at this age, you live and die on every play. So I think those are the main differences.
Well, that's good. It's interesting to hear that. And, one of the reasons that I asked that is, if you go to a coach's clinic, like the NFCA clinics that are coming up, or they have other ones that different people will put on, they bring in a Division I college coach, and then they tend to tell you about how to structure a practice and how to do things. And it's the way you would do it if you were a D1 college team. And yet the needs of a group of 11-year-olds or 10-year-olds or even 14 or 16-year-olds are going to be different. And I think sometimes they forget that, that's the case. So it's just kind of interesting to see, how you're approaching it, what the similarities are. Definitely agree with that on the dailies. I think that's one of the most valuable things that you can do because it just makes the reception of the ball so automatic. But, you have to keep in mind your audience and what they're capable of understanding and what their frame of reference is. I also love the fact that you're teaching them to go for that lead runner right now, even if they can't quite make the play, because they're going to get bigger, they're going to get stronger. And if they know to make that play, they're going to be that much better off down the road.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Ken. At this age group, these kids' arms are not developed, right? So if you get a ball that's hit over an outfielder, they're cruising to home. Nobody has that arm at this age to throw from the fence to a cut and then that cut to home, right? They just don't have the arm. So you're adding a third cut there if you have to, those kinds of things. I think that's what we're teaching. As they get older, that's just going to be a one cut and you're going to fire the ball somewhere. And I think that's the hardest part is, they're trying, they don't have the arm strength and the body to do that. So I think that's kind of, some of the things that we're dealing with here too. But like I said, I think their IQ is getting better. And it's fun. And, it's funny you said something about the NFCA because every year they put out there, what can make our clinics better? And I'm like, bring some high school coaches in. Honestly. Yeah. Right. Like, I think for me, like one of the things that made me a good coach is I was at a high school that didn't have a lot of facilities, right? I didn't have a lot of space and we just had to deal with it, and, I think if you can coach at that level, and again, at high school, it's who's coming to your high school, not if you're a public school. Right. So like you got to, whatever groceries you have, you got to cook the meal. It's not like you have kids coming in that you can recruit to come in and play. So I think that helps me.
Unless you're in the Catholic League.
Well,
Unless
yeah,
you're the
that's a
Catholic
whole
League.
nother discussion. So, which is, you know what, like, listen, it is what it is there, right? I mean, you know, it still made me a better coach because I was able to learn how to use the resources that I had to do what we could do. So that was a big thing for me. But yeah, I always say to the NFCA, like, bring somebody in who's going to relate to some of these coaches who don't have, a budget of whatever it is at the Division I level, that doesn't have a turf field and this stuff. But I will say that a lot of the high schools, at least in this area, are starting to move to turf fields and upgrade their facilities and things like that. So yeah, I always thought that would be great for the NFCA to do that. And they have been. They've brought in some NAIAs and some D3 coaches, which have budgets more realistic towards a high school coach, or so I think they're doing a good job of it. So
yeah, and I even hear on the Dirt podcast, sometimes they bring in travel coaches. They have 2 or 3 travel coaches and talking to them about issues that are there, because it is different and everybody can learn from everyone.
Yep. So another thing I wanted to talk to you about, Ken, and this is more about really just picking your brain. You and I both use Plyo balls, right?
Yep.
I use them. And I'm getting ready to make a post on social media about these things. I trust me. I firmly believe in them, but I'm dealing with some things at the higher level where the kids are warming up using a Plyo ball with a full circle, and it's the heaviest weighted ball.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. And then what happens is I have a kid who then comes in and she's like, every pitch I throw for the first inning is high. And I'm like, I wonder why. Right. And I think Plyo balls are great, but they're good in certain areas for certain things. And even at St. Xavier, we do not use a Plyo ball to warm up. Okay. We just don't. We don't use weighted balls. We go do long toss, right? We do stuff like that. We don't use the weighted stuff. So I want to get your opinion, Ken. What do you think about pitchers before throwing fully the heaviest weighted ball, whatever that is, 3-pound ball? I think it is a 3-pound, 2-pound ball, 3-pound, I think 3 pounds, full circle before they actually pitch. What do you think about that? And what do you think about those pitches being high in the first inning? Is there a correlation between that Plyo ball going in a full circle and then that pitcher going on the mound?
Yeah, I don't have any scientific evidence to back this up, but I think just observationally, I would say there certainly is a correlation there. First of all, I would never have a kid throwing with any kind of velocity at all on a heavy ball like that. I usually tell them, like, the set that I have is 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, and 32 ounce, I believe. That's from our friend Brandon over at the Softball Sanctuary. But I usually tell people when they get them, just set those heavy balls aside. The only thing I ever use a heavy ball for is like a slow rep. If I'm trying to get a kid to feel her arm segmenting on the backside of the circle so that, the upper arm is leading and then the lower arm is trailing, trying to feel that separation in there to get whip. I'll use that for that purpose because it makes it easier to feel what the 2 parts of the arm are doing. Other than that, I'm never going to recommend throwing a heavy ball like that. It's bad for the shoulder. I think it's bad for your timing. I think, you're definitely going to see that. Same thing with long toss. If you go and you do long toss and you keep backing up, and then you just bring the kid back to the pitching rubber, you're going to see her throwing high as well because you've just been telling her to throw the ball over the backstop, right? So I usually have them work their way back in again, kind of coming in. And by the time you're getting to the last few tosses, all right, now we're trying to throw the ball over the plate again. But, I would prefer, just the way I've used them, the Plyo balls are more in practice so that you can get the feeling of overloading and underloading just a little bit. You're working on, some strength things, feeling what your arm's doing, and then you're working on getting the arm to move faster, kind of like sprinters running downhill. And always mixing that in with a regular weighted ball.
Yep. I was just, again, it was baffling to me to hear that they have to do that before they throw. It just, I don't know. Especially when I feel like you talked about forcing the ball, that weight on that arm is going to create you to do things, to get the ball there that you're not going to do in the game. If you're doing it for getting loose, that's great, but I don't ever want a full distance pitch, and I don't ever want, honestly, a full circle with the heavy weighted ball. I always try to, if we're going to do it, like you're talking about, feeling that segmentation of the arm and making sure that we're feeling that, that weight's coming down through the hand instead of a full circle. Like even injury wise, that concerns me with the shoulder. So I just want to get your thoughts on that too. Another thing I want to talk about a little bit today is we're going to talk a little bit about multi-sport athletes, right? So for me, and Ken, this is just me talking with my observations over the years that you and I both have been doing this. When I have kids that are involved in multi-sports right now, right? And I want people to understand this. I'm a huge proponent, right, of kids playing multi-sports. I think it's great for them. I want my daughter to learn a different sport. I think those are great things. However, when you are a pitcher in the fall, it's not always sunshine and roses because volleyball takes up a big amount of your time. And we know, Ken, as a pitcher, you've got to put time in just about every other day through the week. And there's not enough time in the day with volleyball and schoolwork and travel practices and then tournaments on the game. And so my point is, I've seen over the years a little bit of a reduction in some things with some of my kids. It comes back in the wintertime, but as parents and coaches, we have to be able to give some grace to these kids, especially during the fall season, to understand that these kids are doing multiple things throughout the year. I've seen some of my kids that have done really well this fall, and I've seen others that have, man, she's just struggling. I'm like, well, what does the week look like for her? Is she getting in there? Is she getting out there to throw 2 times a week? Right. And it's like, well, no, we don't have the time. I'm like, well, then let's give her some grace and understand that this is where we're at in the fall. And this will pick up from, when we get past volleyball, and basketball for some reason seems to be a little different. I don't know if that's because they're doing different activities. I don't know, but the fall always seems to be a little bit rough. It could be because of, they're not playing as many games. I don't know. What's your thoughts on this? And do you have any feedback that you've seen over the years in the fall with some of your kids that are involved in multi-sports?
Yeah, well, you definitely see that. First of all, if they're playing volleyball and they're doing a lot of jumping and things like that, they're going to be tired. When they come in for a lesson or they go into a practice, a travel ball, or they go into their games, they're tired. Their legs are tired. Sometimes the whole body is tired. They're mentally fatigued a little bit. If you're talking about, well, I guess it really doesn't matter because, club volleyball is just as intense. But, if you're talking about high school volleyball, they're playing that. They're in season. They have games. They have practices. They're doing all those things. It's every day, 6 days a week. Sometimes they have tournaments on the weekend. So it's difficult for them to put that time in. And I don't care what skill you're talking about, whether it's pitching or hitting or overhand throwing or just fielding or anything else. If you don't have time to work on it during the week, or much time at least, yeah, those skills are going to deteriorate a little bit, until you get a chance to get back and find whatever groove it is you need in order to be able to do it. I suppose if you're one of those 1% athletes, you can maybe just walk in and do it because it's all natural to you anyway. But for the other 99% of us that need to put in the work, it's going to be a little bit difficult if you don't have the time to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've just noticed it more and more over the last few years. It's just that we'll have some outings that aren't great. There'll be a higher walk percentage. And I'm just like, what is the relationship of this? And it's hard. You're talking about a kid that, they're coming after volleyball games, to a lesson that's at, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I mean, I'm exhausted at that time. It's, already an hour or two past my bedtime. But I think like we have to put things into perspective, and we have to let these kids get some grace. And I'm talking both parents and coaches. They want these kids to be perfect all the time, and it just doesn't exist. On the other hand, I have kids that, that are doing better in the fall, although they're more focused on softball than they are on there. So I just kind of put that together this week, and just trying to give my kids a little more grace to allow them to do their thing. Because again, I really feel like you get so many good things out of other sports that actually help you be a better athlete. So I encourage it, and I think it's something really good. So kids, keep on doing that. Parents, give your kids some grace. Coaches, give your kids some grace. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, well, and of course you have the other part of that too, where coaches will say, yes, I love the multi-sport athlete, but I'm going to have 3 practices this week. And if you're not at practice, I'm not going to be very happy with you. So, here's this kid trying to balance all of that stuff. And hey, you know what? They still have to do schoolwork too. They have homework that they have to do. If they get, their high school age, maybe they're taking driver's ed. They have some other activities going on, things that they have to take care of. Maybe some of them have a job that they're trying to make some money, so they're a little more prepared for school. There's a lot of things that go on with it. And I think that it's important to remember that all of those things are happening, and that, learning to manage your time is important. There's no question about it, but there's only so much time to give. The pie only divides into so many pieces. So I think that, if they're a little bit off in the fall, that may be an issue. And by the way, it isn't just volleyball anymore. Big sport, at least up this way, is flag football now.
Yeah, I love it though. It looks pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. It looks really cool. I'm so happy for them, and having the girls sport of that. Just kids are just being athletes. I absolutely love that. I think it's such a great sport. So yeah, that's big time out here too. So pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think the other nice thing about flag football is that there aren't, club flag football teams yet. There, isn't all of this stuff where the people with money have an advantage with it. Everybody's just kind of learning as they go along. So a kid who maybe, doesn't have those advantages and is a little bit behind in other sports has an opportunity to stand out, because, there really isn't anything going on outside of that season.
I agree. Another thing I wanted to just touch base on, I think this week a little bit, since this is our first time back in a while, is, it's hard to get parents and even kids sometimes to trust the process of what's going on. I think people are so, at least in this time frame of where we're at, with social media, people are looking for results like right now. And it's, and I try to tell my parents and the clients that I work with, like, listen, trust the process. Let's see where this thing keeps going. And, it's cool because I'm seeing some of these kids that I've had since they were basically 10 go on to commit now and do their thing. And, it's just important that people understand that it's a process, and where your kid is at 12, that's great if she's great, but that doesn't mean she's going to be good when she's 18. You have to trust the process. And I talk about this all the time too, Ken, is I think it's super important for people to realize that who you are entrusting your kid with in their development is absolutely crucial. It is crucial, right? And I think that that's one of the things that, over the last couple of years I've noticed is, like, you see the trend with some of these people as to what's going on. And, are they more interested in just getting, you to click their social media post, or are they really more interested in actually getting kids to the next level? And I think, getting people to trust the process is one of the hardest things to do, because, in this day and age, it's like, if they don't like it, boom, they're out the door, and, this person's here or there. So what are your thoughts about that, Ken? Maybe you can share a story with us of a kid who trusted the process that you with your development through, if you don't mind sharing something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because, when I was thinking about what are we going to talk about this week, I was thinking about the exact same topic, Jay. And I think it's so important for people to realize, because I look through my notes And I look through, I have it all organized, and sometimes when I move a kid from active to inactive, they either, they moved on, they did something or other. And then I'm looking through the inactives and I see how many people came for 1, 2, or 3 lessons and seemed like the kid was making some progress, but then I never saw her again. And I think that there's an unrealistic expectation sometimes that, they're going to come in like a pitcher is going to come in, and then within 2 or 3 lessons, she's going to gain 5 miles an hour. And, that's not the case. We're good, but that's with 2 O's. So, you have to realize that, and every kid is going to work differently. There's some that come in and I can, get a gain out of them in a couple of lessons. There are others that it takes a while for that to happen, for things to click in. And, that's always the difficult thing, is understanding that it is a process. Everything is going to happen in its own good time. So I want to share a story of a girl. Her name's Carson. And she was stuck for a long time. I think the highest I'd had her at was maybe 52. Okay. And she was stuck for a long time. And, in the meantime, we worked on other pitches. She was able to do well, spinning the ball. She wasn't getting much speed, but, we kind of worked through her mechanics and we looked for different things, to try to improve it, used her motor preferences to help her with her launch and all of that. And then recently, all of a sudden, she gained 3 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour, one lesson, and then 2 miles an hour the next lesson. So that, within a week, all of a sudden, she jumped up to 55. And, it was just, after all that long time, it was a really good feeling to see that happen. So you have that, that objective measure. And then in her games recently, as she's been going on, she's been just killing it. She doesn't strike out a ton of people. She gets her fair share of strikeouts, but people just can't hit her hard. She, all that time she spent relying on moving the ball. Now that the speed's come up a little bit more, it's just been an enhancement. And in the last few games as she's pitched, she's just done extraordinarily well. But that was, being patient and trusting the process and allowing it to happen. How about you? Do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, Ken, I just had a kid that this week committed to play at Oakland University. So she's got a Division I commitment to go up there. And not only did I have her since she was basically 11, and they bought in from day one. Her older sister was a pitcher. She hit with me as well too, and could have went and played college softball. She just chose a different career path. She didn't want to go to college. She's out in the working force right away. So she knew that's what she wanted to do. But however, she could have played if she really wanted to. Well, the younger sister, I had them both. So, and the younger sister is the one who just committed. She's going to Oakland University, like I said, and she's both pitched and hit with me. And they've bought in. They were at, I don't know if you remember, Ken, the Nashville Poly Clinic during the COVID time down there. I don't know if you were down there for that one. I don't think you were.
I wasn't down there for that,
but they drove down there to go to that clinic. They've been to other ones up here, and I've had this kid since she's 11 years old, and here she is, 17 years old now, junior in high school, committed to go play, at Oakland University, getting a scholarship, and that's it for me. Those people never swayed. They never swayed one way or the other. I got a little excited there. You see the hands going?
Yeah, the hands got going and you knocked into your mic. That was
knocked down the mic. Hopefully everybody hear that. But they never swayed one way or the other, right? They trusted the process that I had, and they trusted the development that we focused on. And I'm proud of her. There's others I could talk about too. But I think that's the case. Either be all in or just be all in somewhere else, right? Like I say that to people all the time. Like when I'll do a first lesson and they're coming from a different instructor, I'll say to them all the time, like, listen, this isn't a me decision. This is a you decision, right? If you're going to be involved and you're going to come to weekly lessons, or you're going to be consistent with your lessons, then we're going to see solid development over the years. If this is where you're coming to me for a lesson here and you're going to this guy for a lesson there and you're going to that lady over there for a lesson there, well, that's when the water gets really cloudy, because 3 people are telling you 3 different things. and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't see other people. I'm totally fine with that, right? But however, you have to understand, even in the messages that we're giving to them, there's going to be some differences. Like, for instance, Ken, you and I have had kids that have gone to both of us before, right? Our terminology might be a little different, but we're on the same page. And at least you and I will converse about kids, right? Like, where other people, they'll just, we're going to go see so-and-so over here and we're not going to tell him. And it's like, bro, like, it doesn't offend me. Do what you think is best for your kid. However, just understand that there's going to be some cloudy water between those two, and that's okay. And I just say it, like, pick a lane. And if that means you're not coming to me and you're going to go on a different route, that's okay. I'm okay with that. Like, I don't take it personal, right? I think just be all in somewhere. You can't from this guy and that guy and this guy. And that's different than collaborating. Like, if you bring somebody in to help you, like if I brought you in to work with my kids for a lesson, that's different. Like, and I think that's the point of all this is, like, if you're going to buy in, right? And then put the seatbelt on, because it's going to be a bumpy ride for everybody anyway, right? It's not smooth sailing all the way. Again, I always go back to what Darren said. It's not the easy ones that keep you up at night. It's the ones that don't get it. It's like, how can you make them get it more? And I think, that's it. You got to find the right fit for your kid. And then when you find that, just all in with it. Let it unravel the way it's supposed to, right? Like, is that Division I? Great. If it's a Division II, great, right? Those levels don't matter. What matters is that your kid continues to develop. So, that's a story for one of mine that I've had several now that I've had since 10. And it's like, man, we've spent 8 years getting to here. And I say this all the time, Ken, as a teacher, I love my job, but when you're at some kid's signing day, right? Letter of intent signing day, and you're there and you're like, man, this kid has come to me for 8 years, right? 8 years. And this is her dream. Like, that is the most rewarding. And it's also what drives me, right? Like, just helping people get to where they can get to. Because I always say this, like, some people never see the value in some kids. And for me, I think every kid has value, right? Like, it's just who's going to push them to get to that value. So those are super important things for me. It's really cool. And then the second humbling part of that is, like, in the summer, all these college kids still come back, like, I'm talking with, before Kelly Green left to go back to DePaul, and she's like, this is my first last with you. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, this is my first last fall lesson with you. And I'm like, oh my God, like, don't, that kid's 21 years old, senior in college, coming back for lessons still. And I'm like, man, that's super sad. I've had you since you were, basically 14 years old, and that's my point, is like, it's humbling, but it's also really cool. And the coolest part is to see what they do after softball, at least for me. It's so cool to see them. I've got former players that are lawyers and doctors, and and I got other kids that are teachers and stuff. It's really cool to see those kinds of things. So that's it for me, is like, just seeing them develop over the years. And I just posted a picture recently of when she committed, her picture when she was 10U, and then her picture when she committed. It's so cool to see just the development over the years. Pretty cool to see. So.
Yeah, well, and it's fun to look back on some of that stuff too. And you remember this kid, like, everybody looks at her now, and she's just out there banging that ball. She's throwing well, she's doing really well, and they all see her as this great softball player. And you remember her as this little kid who, maybe had a little speech impediment, or was really shy, or she was just tiny. Yep. I've got a girl that I work with that when I first started giving her hitting lessons, I had to bring in the jug short tee because I couldn't put a regular size tee down far enough that it wasn't at her chin, and now she's doing very, very well for herself, playing ball, and people see who she is now, but I remember who she was.
Yeah. And I remember,
it's just fun to see that.
The hurdles. It's the hurdles, right? Yeah. I remember, like, man, are we going to get through this here, or what's going on? I mean, at one point she had, she was working with a different hitting coach, and it was a complete different thing. And I'll tell you what, completely out of her profile. Like, that'll make sense for you and I. And so, the dad messaged me back. He's like, listen, we got to get back in. This was not a good decision. Right now she's not even making contact with things. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get back to it. And again, I think having that information of understanding, motor preferences with kids too, you look back on some of these kids and you're like, whoo, some you got lucky. Some you're like, whoa, boy, I needed to redo that one, and I think that's it. So I think that's huge. I remember the bumps in the road more than anything, because those are the days I'm like, man, what can I do to help this kid continue to grow? So it's been awesome. And both of you and I have had a lot of kids that have got over those hurdles, and just, it's the coolest thing. It really is the coolest thing. So, but yeah, I'm excited. And I think I'll have some more 2027s going here real quickly or soon. And I'm excited for them. More kids that just keep putting in work. It's a really good thing. So,
yeah, well, that is the key, that they have to keep putting in the work. They can't just show up and see us once a week and then, come back the next week and expect to be any better at it. And I think, again, I think one of the important things too is you have to see progress as you go along. If you've got a kid who, you've been working with her for a while, you've been trying to break her of a particular habit, and she's just not breaking it. She may be putting in the time, but is she putting in the right kind of work? Is she working on fixing the mechanic? Is she working on getting the movements the way they need to be? Or is she just going back to the pitching rubber and throwing pitches and trying to, just get the ball over the plate, doing whatever she feels like doing?
Yep. I think that's the lonely work. I call that the lonely work, right? Like nobody's there but you, and it's lonely, but you still got to do it. So yeah, I think that's really, really good. So yeah, it's, like I said, development comes in. It's weird too, Ken, because it doesn't, like some people think, like you were talking about earlier, like some kids like, oh, that 5 miles an hour in 2 lessons, it's not going to happen. Right. And it might just be 1 mile an hour. And that's what I say to people. Like if we work a year, to get 1 mile an hour more, it's still progress. And I think, we got to put those things into perspective with it. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think that, that's a natural progression too. Everybody wants the hockey stick where, you just keep gaining speed all the time. And it doesn't really work that way, at least not in my experience. You could have a plateau for a long time.
Very long time.
Especially when they get to that kind of, and I think you mentioned this before, that 12, 13, 14, even 15-year-old point where their bodies are kind of changing and they're adjusting, growth plates are getting out of whack. Yeah. And all these things are happening, and it's throwing off their understanding of what their body can do.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. So good stuff. Anything else you wanted to talk about today, Ken?
Nothing I can think of offhand. It's just great to be back and chatting with you again. As lovely as Hawaii was, by the end, we were sort of like, yeah, I'm kind of ready to get home.
Some of the best advice I give to my students before they go off to college is a couple things. One, there's no better bed than your bed at home. And there's no better toilet than your toilet at home. So, it is what it is. So yeah, trust me, my family gets the same way. As they're younger, we realized we were a 2-day family vacation. Now that they're getting a little older, we've made it to 3. So usually by the 3rd day, everybody's tired.
Cranky.
You don't eat well. Cranky. They don't sleep good. So yeah, I think it's there's no better feeling than being in your own home, in your own bed. So we're happy that you had safe travels and you got back here for that. I'm glad you and your wife had a chance to get out there and get some vacation time, though. You deserve that for sure. I'm going to get my wife out there for sure eventually one day. She's been out there with my mother-in-law, but we definitely have a Hawaii vacation hopefully soon for maybe our anniversary or something. So
yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think you'll enjoy it. I think anybody would enjoy that. When you're there, if you do go, take advantage of all the different things that you can go to and do. That's not the kind of place where you just want to sit in the hotel and go to the pool.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, Ken. Well, that's just everybody keep listening. We've got some really good guests coming up here in the next few weeks. We're excited for continuing this podcast, and we are committed to getting some good guests. We're excited. I think next weekend we have somebody that's really good. So yeah, we're excited. Keep listening. Again, like Ken says all the time, keep sharing it out there. Send it to people. Whatever you can do, we appreciate you guys. It's already been humbling enough for us that you people are even listening to us. So we appreciate you all.
Yeah, we definitely do. So I guess for Jay and I, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. If you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. So on behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.